The drive for faster, more efficient delivery of infrastructure and building projects has never been more challenging. Efforts to improve efficiency are often difficult in a market that is underpinned by low margins, aggressive procurement, skill shortages, uncertain work pipelines and complex supply chains.
We absolutely haven't stood still, even though we have, stayed in a particular industry and helped to support it. What's been delivered through that industry has both there's been evolution and revolution. Owing to the flexibility of what we have, we are able to deliver software at all ends of the spectrum. So we don't just have people who are, for example, delivering projects who are using our software, but we also have people who are those who are procuring. So those are having new assets built for them, those who have programs of refurbishment, programs of development, and so forth. So very much the client and the supplier. Essentially, what I would say we are limited to is it is about those who are either supplying or are having supplied to them assets which are assets in the built environment. So it's to do with life cycle asset information management. But that might be a client, it might be a tier one contractor, it might be an architect, it might even be a joint venture that is delivering to one of those clients.
If you look historically over the last 20 years or so, where we've had disparate solutions, we've had siloed data and lack of information standards, it's led to confusion and a mistrust of data.
To date, BIM has been concentrated mostly on the design process in the construction industry. In Balfour Beatty, we're taking that a step further, and what we're trying to do is incorporate that into all aspects of the project life cycle, namely health and safety planning, using 3D and 4D synchronization and scenario planning, so that we can actually test how we build the project before we actually go out and do it on site, and therefore we reduce the safety risk to our operatives.
So BIM and technology, digital technology have come about in the last decade or so in construction, really through the 2011 construction strategy, where there was a realisation post-crash that we need to deliver more value for the public pound. And so understanding where digitisation could reduce waste and drive productivity are the key ideas. Building information modelling was one of the tools that came along to enable us to start to do that.
In recent years in the construction and asset management industry, the use of building information modelling, or BIM, has become increasingly common. BIM is the management of information through the whole life cycle of a built asset, from initial design all the way through to construction, facility maintenance, and finally decommissioning.
Technical advancements and technical innovations are progressing faster than organisations can keep up. People and business processes need time to catch up to fully realise the benefits. As an example, we're seeing in the last few years technology savvy millennials are coming into information management positions, and they're driving changes in organisations' information strategies. The industry needs to support these changes by continuing to educate everybody involved.
A lot of people do see this digital transformation to be a very Western developed country kind of philosophy, but actually the countries that are benefiting most are the countries that haven't got those legacy issues. So if you look at Africa, they didn't have a telephone network, they didn't have a landline network. It comes almost back to the culture of the public sector. There's a lot of legacy thinking, there's a lot of legacy work that goes on in the UK, and we're having to unravel some of that and integrate old systems, analog systems into digital systems, where some countries are actually making big step changes. But actually there are some great bridges between both of those ways of thinking. So open source standards, open protocols, allowing systems to talk to each other. Because if you look at some of the big drivers of society, we are more international. And effectively, if we're more international, companies operate, governments operating on more international basis. So therefore we need to make sure that the standards that we're using and that way of actually sharing data, collaborating more, are actually much more transparent and open. And actually I think there's a lot we can learn from developing countries as they can learn from us. So we shouldn't see it to be an exclusive agenda. It needs to be inclusive, and we need to share that. And I think there's a lot of good work going on in that space.
At its core, BIM is a truly collaborative way of working, underpinned by digital technologies, which enables more efficient methods of designing, delivering and maintaining physical assets.
So the challenges in getting new innovative technologies into public sector projects are firstly trying to get what is traditionally a very conservative sector to adopt new technologies, telling people on the ground, hey, we don't need to do things the same way we've always done it 30 years, and people who are quite skeptical of new technologies in understanding what they do, which is kind of hard, concrete, reinforcement, steel work on site. How does technology actually add value to what they're doing? And for people who aren't involved in that kind of digital revolution, understanding the benefits of it is quite hard until they see the tangible value.
I think the other thing is focusing on the BIM mandate, and the reason the public sector ultimately has been set this task is because of all of the identified problems that there were previously in that process. And all of us will benefit from solving those problems. All of us will benefit from reducing the waste that there was in terms of project delivery and indeed operations. As we sit here now, there is a mandate to deliver all centrally funded public sector works using the BIM standards. So given that mandate is there, and given that in fact we helped to shape that mandate, we were very fortunate to do so, it is very clear that there is a need to be able to help ensure that mandate is successful.
BIM as a subject is quite challenging. There are lots of components in BIM, and it touches every part of the construction process. So BIM has been put traditionally in the design area of construction, but the reality is it touches commercial, it touches project management, it touches every part of the delivery cycle and the operational cycle of any asset. There's roughly 3 million people in the UK construction sector, and we need to get those people aware of data, aware of technology, aware of new ways of working, and no one, particularly in an industry like construction, moves very fast. So how do we encourage that transition?
So this isn't just about an agenda of change, agenda of kind of becoming more digital and the benefits that come from it. It is also about how do we find ways for the industry to collaborate. If we can share data, if we can use it in a much more open way, that should actually bring the benefits.
Innovative technologies are changing the way construction is done. Construction processes are improving all the time, not only money saving, but improving site safety. Collaboration across sites spread across the world has never been easier. Virtual walkthroughs allow clients to gain a better understanding of what the final product will look like.
VR, as you know, has been around a long time. It kind of keeps having its next wave of interest, so with the Oculus and Halo and so on, and similarly we've seen most recently the likes of Apple with augmented reality. Like all of these things, I think there will be initial pockets of point projects, but there's a great deal of difference between that in terms of it becoming business as usual. I think the potential of both of those technologies is absolutely huge. I think a little bit like we've seen massive change happen in industries as a result of everyone now having phones, or everyone now having tablets, and the use of tablets on sites has absolutely changed behaviours. Being able to, if we touch on AR first, just having the what has been designed in that digital world becoming just overlaid into the physical, at the same time, so that I can, check out lines of sites in railways, or look at where my building is actually going to sit in a real space, or see what an extension might look like. VR, although I would perhaps share the view of Apple that AR ultimately is going to have more use cases, VR is already doing some really good things, particularly when VR stops being sugar cube models and starts to bring in things like the geography from, you know, the real space. So laser scans, LiDAR scans, which have then been overlaid with a model which has then been put into a virtual reality space. But combine that with being able to have physics models where you can start to interact with and pick up and know how to use equipment and so on, then the ramifications that that has for things such as health and safety and improving and therefore, you know, reducing the number of accidents that happen on site, that has tremendous potential. At the moment, mostly what we are pretty much now seeing as business as usual is VR as a world of, you know, client walkthroughs of what a building might look like and so on.
BIM is more than a 3D rendering of a building. It's a tool to help avoiding problems between the involved parties, such as construction companies and stakeholders. Going forward, the construction industry will need to embrace this advancement in technology.
Looking forward, I think our solutions will continue to drive efficiencies and reduce costs. For example, project administration overheads, quicker setup costs of projects and faster mobilisation and onboarding. When you look at the efficiencies downstream, if you consider the life of an asset versus the relatively short period of time that the project operates to produce that asset, if you procure information with the end in mind, the project will deliver better quality information, allowing asset owners to answer plain language questions.
I would back any move that takes us all to being able to have a standard representation of the information we have, because we only have to look at other examples. I am a realist. I see that there will be frameworks and there may be variations within that, but hopefully there will be commonality, and in that commonality we can still use that to drive real efficiencies.